Every story begins with a spark, an idea, a fleeting moment of inspiration that takes root and grows into something larger than life. Exile Island is one such story, born from a love of epic adventures, colorful heroes, and worlds where imagination knows no bounds. This tale stands on the shoulders of giants. Robinson Crusoe, Swiss Family Robinson, and countless comic books that filled my childhood with larger-than-life heroes and impossible odds. It's woven with threads of fantasy and magic, the kind you find in endless sessions of Dungeons and Dragons with lifelong friends, like John, Joe, Vernon, Joey, and Kathy, back in the halls of Hueytown High School, in the wild and wonderful days of the late 70s and early 80s. But sometimes, a spark reignites from an unexpected place. For me, it came from a fanfiction called Walking on Sunshine by Dogbert Carroll. A brilliant fusion of the Buffy the Vampire Slayer universe with the superheroes from Marvel and DC, and it reminded me that there's still uncharted territory in the realms of storytelling. It gave me the courage to ask, what if superheroes weren't just city saviors, but survivors in a world of raw magic and ancient mysteries? Exile Island is my answer to that question. A love letter to the stories that shaped me, the friends who played alongside me, and the sheer joy of creating worlds where anything is possible. Chapter 2. As I awoke, I realized I wasn't alone. Perched on my chest, staring down at me with wide, jewel-bright eyes, was a small dragon-like creature no larger than a house cat. Its scales shimmered like polished turquoise in the dawn, and delicate, butterfly-like wings of blue and amaranth twitched faintly at its sides. It cocked its head, tiny nostrils flaring as it sniffed at me. Then it spoke in English, well, you're not dead. That's a start. I blinked, frozen in place, and the little dragon's mouth curled upward in something suspiciously like a smirk. Who are you then? And what are you doing in my territory? I blinked, trying to process that a tiny, opalescent dragon with butterfly wings was talking to me. It had a piping voice that was casual, faintly amused, but with an edge beneath the charm. I slowly propped myself up on my elbows, and the creature hopped off my chest, landing lightly on a nearby stone. Its wings flared briefly before settling against its back. I'm Cian, I said cautiously. And wait? Your territory? The dragon tilted its head, the scales along its throat catching the morning light and shimmering faintly. I'm Kip, and yes, I've been here longer than you, Glowboy. And don't think I didn't see your little light show yesterday. I felt my cheeks heat slightly as I remembered stripping naked and launching myself skyward, soaking in solar radiation like some superhero-shaped solar panel. Well, that explains how he spotted me. Kip began pacing back and forth on his stone perch, his tail flicking lazily behind him. So, you're not dead and not immediately trying to blow anything up. That's a good start, I suppose. But seriously, what are you doing here? I hesitated, then sighed. I'm staying here, I guess. I don't exactly have anywhere else to go. The dragon blinked, its head tilting the other way now. Oh, that's vague. I love vague answers. They make things so much easier to understand. I let out a breathy laugh despite myself. Fine. I'm here because I was sent here. Exiled, I suppose. I became an embarrassment of riches and a threat to the happiness of two people I loved. Dropped off with crates full of supplies and told to, I gestured vaguely at the ruins, the moss-covered stones, the crumbling walls. Make something of this place. Kip hopped down from his stone perch and fluttered closer, hovering briefly before landing on a cracked bit of masonry. His tail curled like a question mark. Sounds like a story you probably don't want to go into right now. He paused momentarily and muttered low, I can understand that. Then, returning to his previous attitude, he said, So, you're staying here? In my ruins? I crossed my arms over my chest. Yeah. Seems like it. Kip let out a dramatic sigh, wings flaring briefly. Well, at least you're polite about it. But tell me this, are you planning on burning everything down? Because if so, I'll have to file a strongly worded complaint. That earned him a snort from me. No, but there will have to be some burning and tearing down to clean and repair the ruins. A lot of this ivy and rotted wood must go before I can make this place livable again. The little dragon again cocked its head to the side, its eyes narrowing slightly. You're talking about fixing this place? You're serious? I nodded firmly. Yeah. I mean, what else am I going to do? Sit around and sulk? That'd get boring real fast. Besides, these ruins have potential. If I can clean them up, plant some gardens, maybe round up some of the feral cattle and sheep I saw, I could make a life here. Kip stared at me for a long moment, his wings twitching faintly. Then he let out a little huff of air and flitted over to another stone, turning to watch me from a higher vantage point. You're very optimistic, Glowboy. But all right. Show me. "Go on, hero boy, let's see what you've got." The way he said hero boy made something twist in my chest. It was a mix of bitterness and something else, something fragile. I thought this might be precisely the kind of thing Jace and Ava were worried would lead to my death. I muttered, more to myself than to Kip, "Well, serves them right. They threw me away after all." Kip's ears twitched, or the closest thing he had to ears, but he didn't comment. Instead, I focused on the courtyard. I extended my hand, feeling the familiar hum of quantum energy thrumming beneath my skin. Slowly, carefully, I reached out with my power, directing it into the ivy and moss that clung stubbornly to the courtyard stones and tower walls. The vegetation began to stir, then pull itself away from the stone as if some unseen hand was yanking it free. The ivy writhed and slithered, roots snapping and leaves fluttering before gathering into a writhing ball of vegetation. I directed it toward an open field near the river, where it could be safely burned later. Kip let out a low whistle. "Well, all right then. That's one way to clean house." The power flowed easily, guided by my focus until the courtyard stones began to emerge from beneath their leafy shroud. Cracked, uneven, but still solid beneath the layers of decay. Sweat beaded on my brow, and I let the power fade, lowering my arm. The courtyard looked better. Not perfect, but better. Kip flitted down and landed near my feet, tail curling and uncurling like a cat's. "You really mean it, don't you? You're actually going to do this?" I nodded, wiping the sweat from my brow. "Yeah. I don't have much choice, Kip. This is home now. Or it's going to be." For a moment, Kip said nothing. His jewel-like eyes studied me carefully as if trying to see into the very core of me. Then he sat back on his haunches, wings folding neatly against his sides. "Well, I suppose every grand project needs a foreman. And lucky for you, I'm available." I couldn't help but grin. "Oh, are you now?" "Oh, absolutely," Kip said airily, flicking his tail. "But fair warning, hero boy, I expect snacks. Lots of snacks." I laughed, and for the first time since arriving on the island, it felt genuine. Kip flitted up to a light on a nearby broken stone. He watched as I began clearing more debris. His presence lingered, a bright, mischievous spark in the ruins' heavy silence. It seemed I wasn't as alone on this island as I'd thought. The next day the courtyard was still. Morning light spilled over the broken walls, casting long shadows across cracked stone and moss-covered remnants of a once great structure. The air was crisp, carrying the earthy scent of damp stone, old wood, and creeping ivy. I stood at the center of it all, hands on my hips, scanning the mess before me. It was an overwhelming, choking mass of tangled vines, fallen beams, and shattered stone. But it wasn't hopeless. Beneath the chaos, the bones of something beautiful were still here, waiting to be uncovered. I rolled my shoulders, feeling the familiar hum of quantum energy stirring in my chest, and exhaled slowly. "All right. Time to get to work." It started with the rest of the vines. With a gesture, quantum energy surged outward, wrapping around thick ropes of ivy and tangled vegetation. They ripped free from the walls in great sheets, suspended mid-air by invisible threads before drifting to the courtyard's edge. Next came the stone. Vast slabs of cracked masonry rose from the ground, hovering momentarily in a weightless dance before I directed them into organized piles. I set one aside for usable stone in one corner and fill stone and rubble in another. Smaller debris followed, swept along by shimmering waves of energy until the courtyard floor started to show its ancient tiles again. The wooden beams were more challenging. Some were salvageable and still sturdy enough to be repurposed, but most were splintered, crumbling to dust in my hands. I separated them, creating a stack of usable wood and another marked for fuel. Everything else went into the burn pile near the river, smoldering in controlled fires under a pale sky. Days' worth of work was accomplished in hours. I lost track as I worked, slipping into a rhythm guided by instinct and raw energy. I compressed time and stretched it in strange ways when I focused like this, and by the time I stopped, the sun had dipped low in the sky, but I had accomplished several days of work in one. The courtyard and surrounding area of the ruins were cleared. Cracked tiles stretched out in uneven rows, framed by clean lines of stone walls. Usable materials sat in organized piles, ready to be repurposed. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. And it felt good. It was like something had clicked into place inside me. I dropped onto a mossy stone ledge, wiping sweat from my forehead with the back of my hand. My limbs ached, but it was a satisfying kind of ache, the kind that said you did a good day's work today. Kip fluttered down from a high perch, his tiny wings shimmering in the fading sunlight. He landed lightly on a broken column nearby, jewel-bright eyes fixed on me with something close to awe. "You know," he said, tail flicking, I thought you were impressive when you were just glowing like a lantern, but that was something else. I smiled faintly. Thanks. No, seriously. Kip hopped closer, wings buzzing briefly before folding back against his sides. Where do you come from? Are there more people like you? Do they all toss boulders around and make vines dance like puppets? I hesitated. Kip's curiosity was genuine, and I didn't blame him for asking. But the question hit something raw inside me, something fragile. It's complicated, I said, my voice softer now. Where I'm from, we call people like me Nova humans. Some of us are heroes, or at least strive to be. We use our powers and gifts to help people. We protect people. Or we're supposed to. Kip tilted his head, his expression unreadable. There are villains too, I continued. People who use their gifts for themselves, to hurt others. But heroes, we try to stop them. To keep people safe. It's not easy, and sometimes the words caught in my throat. Jace's smirk. Ava's voice trembling as she said goodbye when the Nexus gate swallowed me whole. I shook my head sharply and looked away. It doesn't matter. Not here. The silence hung heavy between us, broken only by the distant crackle of the burn pile's fire. Kip stared at me for a long moment before speaking again, his voice softer this time. You know, you don't have to talk about it. Not if you don't want to. I exhaled slowly, forcing a smile. Thanks, Kip. But hey, speaking of things that do matter, am I right in guessing it's early spring? Feels like planting weather. The little dragon's eyes lit up, and I could almost see the gears turning in his head as he processed the shift in conversation. Oh, Glowboy, you're sharper than you look. Yeah, it's early spring. A few days past the start of dawning tide, actually. The first month of the year. Dawning tide, I repeated. The name felt appropriate. It felt full of promise. And get this, Kip continued, wings twitching excitedly, we've already had our first Twin Howl for the year. Big deal that. There'll be another one later, a little more than halfway through. I frowned. Twin Howl? What's that? Kip stared at me like I just asked if the sky was blue. Wait, you don't know? Seriously? Okay, sit tight, Glowboy, 'cause this is important. He hopped onto a nearby stone and settled into a storyteller's pose, tail curled around his feet and wings slightly flared. The Twin Howl happens when both moons, the big one, the silver one we call Sylva's, and the little one, the blue one we call Azure, go full simultaneously. It doesn't happen every month, mind you. It's rare. And when it does happen, the whole world feels it. The air hums, the sky glows, and the ley lines, magic stuff, start singing. Ley lines? I asked. Kip nodded. Invisible rivers of magic running through the land. And on a Twin Howl night, they light up like lanterns. You can feel them if you're paying attention. And therianthropes, people who change, into animals, they go wild under those moons. Some say it's sacred. Some say it's dangerous. I sat back, processing his words. A night where magic surged through the land, where the moons sang and therianthropes howled. It sounded beautiful and terrifying. So it's sacred, I said slowly. To them at least. Oh yeah, Kip said. You'd better believe it. And hey, lucky you, it's early spring planting time. Dawning tide is the season of beginnings. You've got good timing, Glowboy. I smiled faintly, looking out at the cleared courtyard, the stone and wood piles. The smoke rising from the burn pile. Yeah, I said quietly. Good timing. I leaned against a stone pillar, arms crossed, watching Kip flutter lazily in midair. The courtyard was quiet except for the occasional crackle from the distant burn pile and the faint calls of birds settling down for the evening. So, Kip, I said, breaking the silence, if the Twin Howl is such a big deal, what happens when? I don't know, both moons are gone? No light, no glow, just darkness? Kip froze mid-hover, his wings twitching as if he'd been hit with an icy draft. He dropped down onto the edge of a cracked stone basin, talons clicking faintly on the marble. You mean the hollow sky? The name alone sent a chill down my spine. Yeah, that. Kip's tail curled tightly around his feet, and his bright eyes darted briefly to the sky before meeting mine again. That's different, Glowboy. Very different. If the Twin Howl is a wild, loud song full of light and magic, then the hollow sky is silence. A deep, smothering silence. I frowned. Like, no magic? None, Kip said softly. The ley lines go still like rivers frozen over. Magic feels sluggish, sleepy, or just gone. Even creatures who don't use magic feel it, though they can't explain why. The air grows still, sounds are swallowed up, and the stars, well, they're bright, but they don't help. What do you mean they don't help? Kip tilted his head, his voice dropping to a near whisper. They say shadows move differently during the hollow sky. That things, older than the moons, older than the ruins here, stir in the deepest dark. Hunters, predators, things that don't care how strong or clever you are. I swallowed, my mouth suddenly dry. So, it's dangerous? Oh yeah, Kip said, wings fluttering uneasily. You won't see packs of therianthropes howling at the moons during a hollow sky. They hide. They huddle close, stay in caves, light fires, and refuse to look into the dark. Nobody wants to see what might be staring back. The little dragon sighed, shoulders drooping slightly. And the worst part? It's quiet. So quiet. Like the world is holding its breath, waiting for something awful to happen. I sat down heavily on a nearby stone block, letting Kip's words sink in. I could almost feel the weight of the silence he was describing, the deep, oppressive stillness. Have you ever been caught out in it? I asked softly. Kip shivered, his wings pulling tight against his back. Once. Never again. He hesitated, then added, if you're smart, glowboy, when the hollow sky comes, you'll stay right here. Light your fire, lock your doors, and don't stray too far from the light. I nodded slowly, staring out at the distant horizon where the sun was beginning to dip lower. I'll keep that in mind. Kip hopped up onto a stone closer to me, his usual smugness dulled by the weight of the conversation. Good. Because I'd hate to have to explain to whatever finds you why you taste like glowing starlight and poor decisions. That earned him a weak chuckle from me, but it didn't chase away the image he'd painted in my mind. The ruins shrouded in total darkness, the air thick and still, and something unseen shifting just beyond the edges of the firelight. I shook off the chill running down my spine and forced a smile. All right, Kip. No wandering into the dark during the hollow sky. Got it? Kip nodded sharply, wings flicking back into a more confident stance. Smart choice, glowboy. Smart choice. I smiled and said, you know, it might be a good idea to start keeping a calendar. Not a bad idea, glowboy, Kip replied. With that, we sat down and drew up one. Kip explained how the year was 372 days long, with 30 days in each month. The moon cycle was 31 days long and the larger moon, silver, was full on the first day of each month, which was also a holiday. Azure, the smaller blue moon, had a 7-day cycle as it zipped around the world, whose name I discovered was Elarion. When we were done, I used my cutting beam to carve the calendar into the top of a large stone slab, and each day I would move a stone from one day to the next. The silence lingered for a moment before I pushed myself to my feet, brushing dust from my pants. Well, I said, trying to shake the tension from my shoulders. I think I'll top off my energy reserves before nightfall. There's no point in tempting fate. The courtyard was quiet again, the last wisps of smoke curling lazily upward from the distant burn pile. I dusted my hands off on my pants and turned my face upward to the sky. The sun started to dip low behind the mountains, painting the horizon gold and amethyst. Kip fluttered onto a nearby stone, his wings twitching as he tilted his head at me. You've got that faraway look again, glowboy. What's on your mind? I should probably go sun myself before nightfall, I said, stretching out my shoulders with a soft groan. The little dragon blinked, tail curling around his feet. Wait, sun yourself? Like a lizard on a rock? Is this a requirement for you? I chuckled softly and shook my head. No, not exactly. My energy reserves will replenish themselves naturally over time, even without sunlight. But, I glanced back at Kip, my smile fading slightly. When I go high enough, up where the air is thin and the sunlight isn't filtered by clouds or atmosphere, I can recharge a lot faster. It's like drinking straight from the source instead of waiting for rainwater to trickle down. Kip's jewel-bright eyes narrowed thoughtfully. So, it's a shortcut. Exactly. And it's best not to be caught at night with my reserves low. There's no sunlight then, and if something goes wrong, well, I let the words hang in the air. Kip didn't need me to spell it out. The little dragon's wings gave an agitated flutter. Huh. So you're like a glowing battery that needs sunlight. Got it. I guess that explains why you're always looking upward like the sky owes you something. I snorted. You've got a real way with words, Kip. He grinned that sharp little draconic grin and flitted into the air, hovering at eye level with me. Well, don't let me stop you, glowboy. Go top off your juice or whatever you call it. I'll hold down the fort. Keep the courtyard safe from, I don't know, overly aggressive squirrels or falling leaves. Heroic work, I said with mock seriousness, raising 2 fingers to my temple in a salute. Kip matched the gesture with one tiny claw before darting upward in a lazy loop-de-loop and settling back onto his stone perch. I glanced back up at the sky, already feeling the familiar hum of quantum energy rising in my chest. With a single leap, I launched myself upward, streaking toward the thinning blue of the upper atmosphere, leaving Kip in the courtyard far below. If you like my channel and the stories I'm telling, please like and subscribe. It really helps my channel and I greatly appreciate it. Until then, may you find peace, happiness, and comfort.